Have you felt it lately? That quiet sense that something in you has shifted, even if nothing on the outside looks different yet? It is not dramatic, and it does not announce itself loudly, but it lingers in the background of your days like a question you cannot unhear. You go through your routines, fulfill your roles, speak the right words, yet something inside you knows you are no longer the woman you used to be. This is not a video every woman will understand, because this moment does not arrive for everyone at the same time. It appears at a very specific point in a woman's life, often after she has tried everything she was told would make her feel complete. She may have built a stable life, a family, a career, or an identity she worked hard to earn. From the outside, it might look like success, or at least survival, but on the inside, the roles that once defined her now feel tight, like clothes she has outgrown without realizing it. The life she built no longer feels like home, and no amount of effort can make it fit again. Here is the strange truth most people never consider. What if this discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong with you, but a sign that something deeper is waking up? What if the emptiness you feel is not a failure, but a summons? Carl Jung believed that the psyche moves in cycles, and that there are moments when the inner world begins to pull energy away from old identities in preparation for a return to the self. Not a return to who you were, but to who you were meant to become. At this stage, many women feel confused. Motivation fades, old goals lose their shine. Relationships that once sustained them now feel draining or strangely distant. They may wonder why they feel restless when nothing obvious is wrong. This is often the moment when a woman is tempted to judge herself, to push harder, to fix what feels broken. But Jung would say that this inner withdrawal is not regression. It is preparation. The psyche is clearing space for something more honest to emerge. This video is not here to tell you how to improve yourself or how to become someone new. It speaks to women standing at a threshold, whether they feel ready or not. Women who sense that the version of themselves they have been performing can no longer carry the weight of their inner truth. Women who feel called inward, even as the outer world continues to demand the same roles and explanations. Only certain women are chosen now, not because they are better, stronger, or more spiritual, but because they are no longer able to live in ways that betray their inner reality. If you are here, it may be because your psyche has decided it is time to come home. Not loudly, not publicly, but irrevocably. Before the comeback ever becomes visible, it begins as a quiet dissatisfaction that cannot be explained away. It is subtle at first, almost easy to dismiss, until it starts touching everything. A woman may wake up one morning and realize that the life she worked so hard to build no longer energizes her, even though nothing is technically wrong. She is functioning, responsible, and capable, yet something inside feels hollow. In real life, this often shows up in ordinary moments. She sits at a dinner table with people she loves and feels oddly distant, as if she is watching herself from the outside. She scrolls through messages from friends she once leaned on and feels tired before even replying. A job she once felt proud of now drains her by midday, not because it is harder, but because it no longer feels meaningful. She may catch herself thinking, "Why does this feel so heavy when I should be grateful?" That question alone can fill her with guilt because she does not want to seem unappreciative or spoiled by life. Many women at this stage try to fix the feeling. They push themselves to be more positive, more productive, more engaged. They add new goals, sign up for new projects, plan trips, or try to reignite old passions. But the emptiness remains. What once motivated her now feels flat. What once gave her direction now feels like an obligation. Relationships that used to sustain her begin to feel draining, not because the people are bad, but because she is no longer meeting them from the same inner place. Carl Jung understood this state as a withdrawal of psychic energy. He believed that when the psyche is preparing for a deeper alignment with the self, it pulls energy away from roles, goals, and structures that no longer serve inner truth. This is why nothing feels right anymore. It is not because the woman is failing at life, but because life as she has known it is no longer aligned with who she is becoming. This moment can be deeply unsettling, especially for women over 35 who have invested years into being reliable, strong, and consistent. She may wonder if she is losing motivation, slipping into depression, or becoming ungrateful. But often, the opposite is happening. Something deeper is asking for her attention. The part of her that lived on autopilot is being called to step aside so another part can emerge. The hardest part is that this stage offers no immediate reward. There is no applause for feeling lost, no validation for questioning a life that looks fine from the outside. She may feel alone in this experience, especially if the people around her are still comfortable inside the structures she has outgrown. Conversations feel shallow. Advice feels irrelevant. What she needs cannot be explained easily, because she does not fully understand it yet herself. Yet this emptiness is not a void. It is a threshold. When nothing feels right anymore, it is often because something more honest is demanding to be acknowledged. The psyche is creating discomfort on purpose, not to punish her, but to interrupt a life that no longer fits. This is the beginning of the comeback, even if it feels like disorientation. And the question is not how quickly she can escape this feeling, but whether she is willing to listen to what it is asking of her. Long before she can explain what is changing, her body begins to refuse what her mind still tries to manage. This refusal is quiet at first, almost polite, but it grows clearer with each passing day. In real life, this often starts with fatigue that does not match effort. A woman may sleep 8 hours and still wake up exhausted, not from lack of rest, but from carrying a life that no longer fits. She notices her shoulders tense before certain meetings, her stomach tighten before family gatherings, her breath shorten when her phone lights up with yet another request. She may tell herself she is just stressed, just busy, just getting older. But the body keeps speaking. Headaches appear for no medical reason. Her tolerance for noise, crowds, and constant conversation drops. What once felt manageable now feels overwhelming. She might notice that she no longer wants to explain herself. She cancels plans not because she is antisocial, but because her system feels overloaded. A simple dinner out feels like too much stimulation. A long phone call feels draining before it even begins. She wants quiet, not as an escape, but as a necessity. This can be confusing, especially for women who have spent years being emotionally available, dependable, and responsive. She wonders why she suddenly feels fragile when she has always been strong. From a Jungian perspective, this is not fragility, this is intelligence. Jung believed that when consciousness falls behind inner truth, the body steps in as the messenger. The nervous system becomes the language of the psyche. Fatigue, sensitivity, and withdrawal are signals that the old way of living is no longer sustainable. The body knows before the mind is willing to admit it. Many women at this stage push through the signals. They drink more coffee, push harder at work, force themselves to socialize, and tell themselves to stop being dramatic. But the more they override the body, the louder it becomes. Anxiety may appear without a clear cause. Sleep becomes restless. Emotions feel closer to the surface. She might cry over small things or feel irritated by minor disruptions. These are not random symptoms. They are the psyche asking for a change in direction. Consider the woman who has spent decades being the emotional anchor for everyone else. She listens, supports, fixes, and soothes. One day, she notices that after every interaction, she feels depleted. Her chest feels tight. Her jaw clenches. She starts getting sick more often. Her body is saying no to the role she has outgrown, even if her identity is still attached to it. Or the woman who built her life around achievement and responsibility. She did everything right. Education, career, stability. Now, sitting at her desk, her body feels heavy. Her eyes ache. Her motivation disappears. She tells herself she should be grateful, yet her system feels like it is shutting down. This is not laziness. It is the psyche withdrawing energy from a structure that no longer reflects the self. The climax of this stage comes when she realizes she cannot think her way out of what the body is asking. No amount of logic, motivation, or discipline brings relief. The old solutions stop working. That moment can feel frightening because it forces her to listen instead of control. The body becomes the boundary she never learned to set with words. Jung understood that true transformation begins not with understanding, but with obedience to inner signals. When her body says no, it is not rejecting life. It is rejecting a version of life built on self-betrayal. The psyche is preparing for change long before logic catches up, and the real question becomes whether she will continue to silence the messenger or finally honor what her body has been trying to protect all along. At some point, discomfort turns into a quiet insistence that will not go away. What feels like restlessness or inner conflict is often something far more personal, trying to return. In real life, this awakening often begins with small but unsettling moments. A woman may find herself irritated by conversations she once tolerated easily. She may feel a surge of anger when she is interrupted, dismissed, or expected to be agreeable. This surprises her because she has spent much of her life being the calm one, the peacemaker, the one who smooths things over. She wonders where this sharpness came from and whether something is wrong with her. But nothing is wrong. Something is waking up. Many women learned early that survival depended on being easy to handle. They learned to soften their opinions, mute their desires, and swallow their anger to keep relationships stable. Over time, these traits became habits, then identities. The woman who spoke too loudly, wanted too much, or felt too deeply was slowly pushed underground. Not erased, but hidden. Jung called this the shadow, the parts of the psyche that were exiled to protect belonging. As the comeback approaches, the shadow no longer stays quiet. A woman might suddenly feel drawn to creative outlets she abandoned years ago. She may crave solitude not just for rest, but to hear her own thoughts again. Old dreams resurface. Old grief demands attention. She might feel an urge to say things she has never said out loud. This can be frightening because it threatens the image she built to survive. Consider the woman who has always been praised for being supportive. She listens endlessly to others, but feels unheard herself. One day, during a familiar conversation, she feels an unexpected surge of resentment. Her chest tightens. Her words feel heavy. She realizes she no longer wants to be the container for everyone else's emotions. This does not mean she has become cruel. It means the part of her that was silenced for the sake of harmony is demanding space. Or think of the woman who once loved her creativity but gave it up to be practical. Years later, she feels restless and empty. She scrolls through social media, feeling both inspired and bitter. She cannot explain why. What she is feeling is the buried creative self, knocking from within, asking to be seen again. The tension she feels is not confusion, it is recognition without permission. Jung believed that what is buried does not disappear. It waits. Suppressed anger turns into anxiety. Unlived desire turns into numbness. Unexpressed truth turns into fatigue. As these buried parts begin to stir, a woman may feel like she is unraveling. In reality, she is reassembling. This stage often brings inner conflict. One part of her wants to maintain peace and familiarity. Another part wants honesty and freedom. She may feel guilty for wanting more. She may judge herself for feeling dissatisfied. But the psyche does not awaken without purpose. The shadow is not rising to destroy her life. It is rising to complete it. The climax of this awakening comes when she realizes that the tension inside her is not a problem to fix, but a message to listen to. The buried woman is not asking for permission anymore. She is asking for recognition. This is the moment when a woman understands that her discomfort is not a sign of instability, but a sign of truth, returning after years of absence. The buried woman does not come back gently. She comes back with urgency because she carries everything that was sacrificed for acceptance: anger that protects boundaries, desire that restores vitality, creativity that reconnects meaning, truth that ends self-betrayal. What feels like inner chaos is actually the psyche correcting a long imbalance. The real question is not whether this woman will wake up. She already has. The question is whether she will be silenced again or finally welcomed home. The moment that changes everything rarely arrives wrapped in clarity. It usually comes disguised as collapse, confusion, or exhaustion that no amount of positive thinking can fix. In real life, this breakdown often looks painfully ordinary. A woman wakes up one morning and cannot bring herself to care the way she used to. She goes through the motions at work, but feels hollow behind her eyes. Conversations feel heavy. Even small decisions drain her. She may tell herself she is just tired, unmotivated, or ungrateful, yet rest does not restore her. This is not burnout alone. This is the psyche refusing to continue a life built on identities that no longer belong to her. Many women experience this moment after a visible rupture, a divorce that leaves her staring at the walls of a quiet house, a betrayal that shatters the image she held of love or loyalty, a career milestone that should feel victorious, but instead lands with a dull ache. She did everything right, followed the rules, endured, adapted, and stayed strong. Now she feels broken, and the shame of that feeling cuts deep. Modern culture tells her to rise above it quickly. Stay positive, be resilient, improve yourself, fix what is wrong. But Jung understood that true transformation does not move upward first, it moves downward. The psyche must descend into grief, anger, confusion, and loss to retrieve what was abandoned in order to survive. This breakdown is not a weakness. It is the collapse of a false structure. It is the moment when the mask can no longer hold the weight of a whole life. The woman who was always capable, accommodating, and composed cannot perform anymore. She may cry for reasons she cannot name. She may feel anger that scares her. She may grieve years she thought she had already healed from. These emotions are not regressions. They are returns. Consider the woman who prided herself on being emotionally stable. She never needed help. She held families together, supported partners, raised children, and kept going. When her breakdown comes, it feels humiliating. She cannot stop crying. She snaps at people she loves. She feels lost inside her own life. Yet what is happening beneath the surface is profound. The part of her that carried everyone else is finally setting down the burden. The psyche is demanding honesty instead of endurance. Or think of the woman who built her identity around being desirable, competent, or needed. When those roles fall apart, she feels as though she no longer exists. The mirror does not reflect who she thought she was. This is the psychological death Jung spoke of, the death of borrowed identities, the death of survival selves. It feels like falling apart because it is the end of something, but it is also the clearing of space. The descent into the shadow is uncomfortable because it removes distraction. In the quiet of breakdown, a woman meets the parts of herself she avoided, the anger she swallowed, the dreams she postponed, the grief she minimized, the truth she was afraid to speak. This encounter is painful, but it is also where strength is recovered. Not the strength to endure more, but the strength to live truthfully. The climax of this breakdown arrives when she realizes something startling. What she called failure is actually honesty. What she called weakness is actually exhaustion from being false. What she called the end is the psyche insisting on a truer beginning. This is the moment when despair shifts into recognition. Her comeback does not begin when she feels confident again. It begins when she stops resisting the descent, when she allows herself to grieve without rushing to heal, when she lets confusion exist without forcing answers, when she stops trying to rebuild the old self and instead listens for what wants to emerge. Jung believed that only what descends can truly rise. A woman does not retrieve her power by bypassing pain, but by moving through it with awareness. The breakdown is not the enemy of her comeback, it is the doorway, and once she passes through it, she carries a strength that cannot be taken, because it no longer depends on who she pretends to be. The first visible sign of her comeback is subtle, yet unmistakable. She no longer feels the need to justify her inner movements to the world. In real life, this often begins quietly. A woman who once explained herself endlessly starts pausing before she speaks. She notices how often she used to soften her truth so others would not feel uncomfortable. She remembers the long messages she wrote to smooth over tension, the careful words chosen to avoid being misunderstood, the emotional labor spent managing reactions that were never hers to manage. One day, she simply stops. She declines an invitation without a detailed excuse. She ends a conversation when it begins to drain her, without apologizing for needing space. She sets a boundary at work and does not follow it with a paragraph of reassurance. This is not rebellion, it is clarity. The nervous system that once lived in constant negotiation finally exhales. Others notice the change immediately. A friend asks if something is wrong. A family member says she feels distant. A colleague hints that she has become difficult. What they are sensing is not cruelty or withdrawal. They are sensing the absence of access they once had. She is no longer available in the old way, and that unsettles people who were accustomed to her emotional availability. Jung described individuation as the movement toward inner authority. This is the moment when a woman stops organizing her life around approval and begins orienting herself around truth. In practical terms, it looks ordinary. She leaves earlier when she feels tired. She does not respond right away to messages that once demanded immediate attention. She listens to her body instead of overriding it. Yet, psychologically, this shift is profound. Consider the woman who spent years being the peacemaker in her family. She smoothed over conflict, translated emotions, and absorbed tension so others could stay comfortable. When she chooses herself, she stops mediating. She allows silence to exist. She lets discomfort belong to the people who created it. This feels terrifying at first. Guilt rises. Fear whispers that she will be rejected. but as time passes, something stabilizes inside her. She realizes that relationships that only function through her self-sacrifice are never balanced to begin with. Or think of the woman who overfunctioned in love. She anticipated needs, adjusted her desires, and made herself easy to stay with. Choosing herself means she no longer negotiates with behavior that hurts her. She does not explain why respect matters. She does not chase clarity from people who offer confusion. When something feels wrong, she listens. This does not make her cold. It makes her honest. This is individuation in motion. She is no longer governed by external expectations or internalized rules about being good, agreeable, or low maintenance. She is guided by an inner compass that feels steady even when it leads her away from familiar ground. Choosing herself stops feeling like betrayal and starts feeling like alignment. The emotional climax of this phase arrives when she realizes how much energy she used to spend managing perceptions. Without that burden, her presence changes. She speaks less, but means more. She listens without absorbing. She moves through life with a quieter confidence that does not seek validation. People may resist this new version of her, but some will respond with unexpected respect. Others will drift away. Both outcomes are information. Jung believed that becoming whole requires separation from what no longer reflects the self. This stage is not about isolation, it is about discernment. She learns the difference between connection and obligation, between love and self-abandonment. Her boundaries are no longer walls built from fear, but thresholds shaped by self-respect. Choosing herself no longer feels dramatic. It feels necessary, like breathing after holding air for too long. She does not announce this change, she lives it. And in doing so, she steps fully into her own authority, not as an act of defiance, but as an act of truth. What happens next does not look like victory from the outside, and that is exactly why it is real. Her comeback does not announce itself. It does not arrive with explanations, declarations, or the need to be seen. It unfolds quietly, the way dawn enters a room before anyone notices the light has changed. In everyday life, this looks simple. She wakes up with less urgency to prove anything. She moves through her day without rehearsing conversations in her head. She no longer checks herself against others to measure her worth. There is a subtle steadiness in her posture, a groundedness in her decisions, a calm refusal to rush back into patterns that once consumed her. This is not numbness, it is present. Some people will drift away during this phase. Friends who relied on her emotional availability may feel unsettled. Family members who were comfortable with her old role may push back. Even relationships she once believed were essential may dissolve quietly. This can hurt deeply, especially for a woman who spent much of her life holding others together. But loss at this stage is not punishment. It is information. What falls away reveals what was sustained by her self-abandonment rather than mutual truth. At the same time, something else begins to happen. New connections form without effort. Conversations feel lighter and more honest. She attracts people who meet her rather than manage her. These relationships do not require performance. They grow slowly with respect and reciprocity. She realizes that the space created by letting go was not emptiness, but room. Jung understood this movement as a necessary separation from the collective in order to return to the self. Becoming whole requires stepping away from borrowed identities and inherited expectations. This is why the comeback feels solitary at first. She is not retreating from life. She is returning to her center. The deepest transformation here is internal. She stops seeing herself as someone who must be fixed, improved, or validated. She recognizes that her exhaustion came from living out of alignment, not from lacking strength. By reclaiming what was buried, silenced, or delayed, she restores her own vitality. Nothing new was added. Nothing artificial was created. What changed was ownership. This is the quiet power of her comeback. It cannot be rushed. It cannot be taken away. It does not depend on circumstances or approval. Even when life remains imperfect, she stands differently within it. She trusts herself. She listens inwardly. She chooses truth over comfort. And that is why her comeback is unstoppable. It is rooted in something no one else can give or take. She is no longer trying to become someone else. She has returned to who she always was before the world asked her to disappear. If this touched something sacred inside you, don't let it fade into silence. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your presence here is not just support, it's resonance. And if you feel moved to give back, your donation becomes a quiet but powerful gesture that helps keep this light alive for others still walking in the dark.